Good morning. How are you doing, Kirsten?
I'm so happy to be talking to you. It's really exciting. Yeah, I'm
It's
good.
lovely to talk to you all the way on the other side of the world. If you look at a globe, we're like directly opposite from each other.
We're practically in Antarctica.
So you are in New Zealand,
Christ, in
Christchurch?
Christchurch. In Christchurch, yeah.
How are things going there?
Really good, really good. Yesterday we moved to level 3 of our lockdown stage. So it's some people have been describing that as level 4 light, because there really aren't huge changes for a lot of people, but 1 million people, which is a fifth of the population, have been able to go back to work this week. So that's significant for them.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm,
I've been following pretty closely Jacinda's
mm.
live updates and the numbers in New Zealand, and I'm so impressed with how well you are doing. Well done, Kiwi.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy about it too, and very positive about it. I think that we've done something quite amazing, actually. And partly I think that's because as a nation, we're small, so we have that advantage, but we also have quite a tight sense of community.
Mhm.
That's my perception anyway, but I haven't really lived anywhere else other than Australia, so.
Well, from my outside perspective, and I've only been there a couple times, but it did seem exactly like that. It seemed like
Mm,
everybody had in the back of their mind that they just looked out for each other, that they were
yeah,
part of something, and it wasn't me against the world. It was
yeah.
we're in this together.
Well, I guess because we're so small, we've only probably got 2 degrees of separation from anyone else. I always used to joke, well, it's an ongoing joke with all New Zealanders, I think, that if you're travelling overseas, you will meet somebody who asks you if you know John from Wellington. And chances are you do.
So did you hear the story about when I was there teaching at the symposium and got a ride in one morning with a couple that was volunteering, and they looked at my tag and said, "Oh, you're from Cary, North Carolina. So are we." And then we were
Oh,
talking to them. It gets better. It gets better. I
yeah.
was talking to them. They lived in my neighborhood.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know, right? It was, and the funniest thing, when I was in Greece, in Athens, like the biggest city,
Mhm.
in the placa at a cafe, talking to the young couple next to us. Um, they sounded American. We're talking to them. They're on a honeymoon. It turned out they were also from my neighborhood.
The people in your neighbourhood must travel as much as New Zealanders do.
Well, we apparently get out and about and have magnets for each.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
It was pretty funny, kind of a crazy fun thing, really fun. So what have you been working on lately?
Well, I've done a couple of things recently that are new class samples for me because I've been teaching for, oh gosh, I'm not even sure now, more than 25 years.
Mhm.
And as you know, when you're teaching, you need to be coming up with some fresh class samples from time to time. So the one that you can see behind me is,
Mm.
you can only see a tiny portion of it because it's a fairly large single bed size quilt. And it's for a new class that I'm starting. I'm supposed to be teaching it in a few months' time. Whether or not that still happens, we'll see, I guess. Um, I know that a lot of quilters are real planners. They figure out everything about how their quilt's going to look before they go ahead. Most of my quilts are much more organic than that, and I like to work with a collage kind of process when I'm making applique quilts, but also with pieced quilts. They often just kind of evolve. Usually I start with a colour palette, and then I start making and just sort of see where it goes. So this quilt I've called the class How to Grow a Quilt. And we are going to start with, let me pick one to look at. Oh, no, you can't see. Yes, you can see
Yeah,
that
we
one.
can see
Well,
it.
this one's better, actually, this one.
Okay, good.
So I'm starting with a central square, and that central square can be any, oh, my hand's got to go the other way, can be any size you want it to be. So obviously this one's really big,
Mhm.
this one's really little. And then add a frame around it. And then for cohesion through the quilt, I've also done stitch and flip corners. The stitch and flip corners create this little doodad here, and they're the only thing that's a consistent size through the quilt. So you get very different visual effects depending on the size of the square that you start with. And if you fussy cut the center, or if you, for example, on this one, you can see I've put a row of a border of squares around it and mitered them. So you start getting these really different sort of effects. And then I started adding applique bits, so circles of different sizes. I can't get my finger to go the right way. I'm not pretty good at this anyway. Yeah, so I started adding different circles and things to it. At the moment, it's not really quilted. A friend of mine has quilted it in the ditch for me between the blocks, and then each block is going to be some different pattern, free motion machine quilted. So that one is still kind of in progress, really. Sitting behind me on the chair here is my new machine applique quilt for my machine applique class. Now this one is, you can't see the whole thing, but you can see some of it.
Hold it really still right there. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Thank you very much. So about 20 years ago, I made a quilt for a local guild challenge. The theme was floral fantasy, and I made a quilt that I called efflorescence, which is a made-up word, but it's, you know, kind of like essence of flowers or something silly like that. And it was really, really fun to make. I had a brilliant time making it, and I won the challenge, and that was exciting too. And then I made that into a pattern, which I sold for quite a few years. And I also used it as a sample for my machine applique class. And somebody recently suggested to me that I remake some of my older quilts. And I thought, yeah, I'd quite like to remake that. And I was going to make it the same way as the original, just basically use the pattern myself. But I decided instead to use some of the design elements from it and rework the overall pattern. So these sort of big fanciful orchid things are on the original one.
They look like wings.
Yeah, and so is this stylized rose, which is a sort of an Elizabethan Jacobean kind of thing. It's also got a bit of piecing down the side. So those are the class samples. And then I've also been working on a couple of things just for myself. So a number of years ago, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we moved. We move a lot. In fact,
we've been in the earthquake, wasn't it?
Yeah, a couple of years after the earthquake, we came here. My husband Peter is a structural engineer, so he was very interested in being able to work here with the results of the earthquake, and also genuinely felt that he had something that he could help. You know, it was a way of helping people, so that was why we came here primarily. And I love it here, and nobody will ever make me leave, so we're here now. But just before that move, when you move internationally, you pay cost on the volume of what you're moving, not the weight. Well, the way we shifted, we did. So I was trying to reduce the volume of a lot of my belongings, and I had this enormous box of scrap fabrics, and I thought there's no way I'm going to pay to move this huge box of scraps. So instead of moving the whole box, I sat down and cut them all into squares and ended up with about a shoebox, or maybe a little more than a shoebox, full of 2.5, 3-inch and 4-inch squares. And I felt so proud of myself, and I thought, oh, this is really, you know, cost-effective traveling for a quilter. Well, those squares have sat there all this time, and I've never done anything with them. So I've always really liked, is it Camille Ross Kelly from Thimble Blossoms did a really beautiful quilt called Swoon, a pattern that's available, and it was all over the internet at one point, and I loved it. I really loved it. And so I had in the back of my mind that I'd like to do something like that. So there's a slight variation on her block, a very slight variation. It's just got a couple of seams missing. And I started making this with those scrap squares that I'd pre-cut. So all of I won't show you all the blocks because there are quite a few of them, but they're all a distinct colourway.
Oh, that's lovely.
I've added some more recent fabrics to them as well, because I didn't have enough of some colours. So that's been really fun. So I've been working on that one.
Nice.
And the other one that I've been doing is, do you know Katie Jones' scrap vomit quilt?
No, I'm actually not a piecer.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, I know you're not, but yeah. So scrap vomit, the most charming name, is literally just sewing squares
Perfect.
together. So these are just the 3-inch squares,
Mm-hmm.
but those blocks are alternated with sort of like mini trip around the world
Nice.
kind of things. Yeah. So
nice. That's going to be lovely. So it's really funny. I'm completely not a piecer, but here in the States, there's such a shortage of protective equipment for healthcare workers that we've all been making masks.
Mm-hmm.
And I have actually used up my entire supply of batiks that I've built over the last 10 years.
Wow, you must have made a lot of masks.
It wasn't a gargantuan. It was like once a year I would go through a certain store that had like everything in the world, and I would buy all of one colorway, like from light to dark, every red that they had. So each year and a half, it would be a different color. But it's been, it feels good to help, but at the same time, that's my fabric that's leaving. So all the little scraps, I have a scrap master ruler. I've been cutting them into it's meant to cut for half square triangles. So down to the tiniest, like 1-inch half square triangle.
Okay, you've got about 7 years. So, okay, start planning now what you're going to do with those scraps.
I have pieced one block because it's getting much, much better. And now it's like 5 days of good. And then one day where I just kind of mentally and emotionally crash. And doing something completely mindless, like a lot of people are knitting, but doing this mindless thing of either trimming those scraps or sewing just half square triangles is just soothing. So, depending on how long this lasts, I might get something done.
I think that's why I've been sewing the squares and a simple block, is because it doesn't require any real mental energy. It's just a little moment of solace and calmness, as you say. I'm really aware that a lot of, no, I shouldn't say a lot, some of my friends and family have been really struggling with the isolation, and it's wearing on a lot of people. We've been really fortunate in our house, and I don't take that lightly. We've got 6 in our bubble. That's me and my husband Peter and our adult son Clancy and our daughter Kitty and her husband Liam and their 10-month-old son Bjorn, who is most of my day's activity revolves around chasing him. He's very, very busy and very noisy. And also we have one of Kitty's friends staying with us as well. So we've got a pretty full house, but we're all quite self-sufficient kind of people. And I think for the most part we actually quite enjoy not having to go anywhere and not having any commitments to anybody else. So we're really doing okay. I can't remember what else I was going to say about that.
I love the way the Kiwis are calling it their bubble. You choose your people and that's your bubble, and you stay in your bubble. We don't have enough leadership here to give us direction like that. I mean, we're smart enough to do our own thing, but we've got 5 here in the house. We live next door to the neighborhood tennis court, though, and my husband.
Oh, that's good.
He has one friend in the neighborhood that he brings over to play tennis, and they can't go to the net at the same time. And they have to wear masks in and out if they're going through the door at the same time, and they have sanitizer to take care of their hands afterwards. So I trust they're being good, but it's interesting, isn't it?
It is really interesting, and you're saying that interesting that we use the word bubble. I think it's really helpful to have very strong and very positive, empathetic language around this situation. And I also like that we have bubbles, that we're using the word bubble. And one of the phrases that our Prime Minister has used in every single one of her announcements is the admonition to be kind. And I think that gets into a nation's psyche, hearing those words.
Yeah.
It's a really helpful thing.
It's delightful. And I also have to admit that I just love hearing Kiwis say the word bubble with the way
bubble.
Accent.
Bubble. Yeah, I'm kind of aware of the fact that when I say it, it doesn't sound like bubble. How do you say it? Bubble?
Bubble?
Bubble? Yeah, we can both sound weird now. You say it enough times, it sounds strange, no matter how your accent is.
For sure it does. For sure it does. What is one thing that you're looking forward to as soon as this is completely over?
3 things come to mind. The first is obviously visiting friends, because I've been having Zoom hookups with friends, and that's really nice, but it's not the same as being able to give people a hug. And I'm a real hugger, so I'm missing my friends. Secondly, my biggest fun in any week is op shopping. You call it thrift shopping.
Oh yeah.
I love op shops. Just about everything I own comes from an op shop. This cardigan comes from an op shop.
Which stands for opportunity shop. It took me a long time to figure that out. I love thrift shopping too.
Yeah. And thirdly, I'm looking forward to seeing what the changes are that come about societally from this. I'm really, really hoping that some of the good things that we've found in this situation are able to be maintained afterwards. Maybe I'm the eternal optimist, and that's an unlikely thing, but we'll see.
We can hope, and we can try.
We can hope, and even if we don't keep some of those social things, maybe some of the big picture stuff, some of our economic structures may have realised that, well, they're not entities, are they? They're not people, but there may be a realisation that some of our systems haven't really been working well for people, which is why they're there in the first place, and we might be able to maintain some of those changes.
Yeah, that's a delightful thought, and I share your hopes and your wishes. That'll be good. It has been absolutely wonderful to have time to talk to you. I appreciate your taking time.
Oh, I've loved talking to you, Lyric. I so enjoyed spending time with you when you were in Christchurch, and I really hope we can do it again in person sometime.
It's going to happen. I'm going to make it happen.
Even if you have to paddle your own canoe back over here. Huh?
I better start working on my arm. It's a long paddle from here.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you have an absolutely wonderful day, and here's my virtual hug to you.
This is to you too.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Bye.